you do me a favor? Can you catch this for me? Ready? All right, throw it back. All right. God loves you. I love you.
You needed that, Joe.
What you didn't know is that that was all a plot, and Gavin was showing us what it's like to be mad. he was doing a good job. You did great. You were very convincing. So, I didn't make it very far into this week's gospel lesson from Matthew before getting hung up. I didn't make it any further than the beginning. Jesus says, "You have heard it said to those in ancient times, 'You shall not murder, and whoever murders shall be liable to judgment.' But I say to you that if you are angry with a brother or sister, you will be liable to judgment. And if you insult a brother or sister, you will be liable to the council. And if you say, 'You fool,' you'll be liable to the hell of fire." Does this teaching by Jesus worry anyone else? Who here has ever gotten angry with somebody? Who here has ever called anybody else a fool? Or worse? Does Jesus prohibit us this morning from getting angry? I mean, it seems unfair to me because Jesus certainly seems to get angry from time to time in the Bible. And even once he trashes the temple because he's so upset. He flips over tables and chases people out of the temple. And isn't anger a natural human emotion? And sometimes I wonder if even being angry is necessary. Sometimes in the face of injustice, in the face of domestic violence, in the face of child abuse. Those are things I would think that maybe we should get angry about. And these questions have bothered Christians for a long time. In fact, when the Bible was first being translated into English, the King James Version back in 1611, the writers assumed that Jesus couldn't really be against all anger, right? Because, there's times when you should be. So they added in a couple words. They wrote that you shouldn't get angry without cause. They made it work. Still, I'm left wondering what God's word is for us today concerning anger. I mean, because again, it's something that we all experience. So I did what I often do when I'm stumped or confused. I called somebody who I knew to be deeply wise. And my one phone call was to Karen. Karen was a member at my last church out in Washington. And she had moved there with her 4 extraordinary daughters so that she could attend medical school and start a second career. And I called Karen because I only remembered pieces of her story. And I recalled her speaking powerfully about anger, about grief and bitterness. You see, Karen's husband was killed in a horrific car accident a few years ago, leaving her alone to raise these 4 girls, alone without her best friend and alone without the love of her life. And Karen was gracious enough to remind me of her story and to say that she was all right with me sharing it with you today. About a year after her husband's death, she was at a Lutheran retreat center and heard a pastor giving a Bible study. And somewhere in this Bible study, he had the thought that, and he said that death is not the worst thing that can happen to you. And this hit Karen pretty hard, as she was still reeling from her husband's death, trying to raise 4 kids. She said, "No." She said, "Death is the worst thing that can happen to you. Thank you very much." And seeing this pastor later at lunch, she was going through the line, and she thought, if nobody sits down next to him, he's going to get a piece of my mind. And she told him what she thought about his claim about death. Pastor Allen listened to her story of loss and heartbreak. And when she had finished, Allen said that she had every right to be angry, that she had every right to be hurt, that she had every right to be bitter. He said that no one would blame her for building walls around her to protect her after this terrible loss, to build a house of bitterness and anger, to live in this house after what she had lost and suffered. But this pastor left her with a question. But is this house of bitterness and anger where you want to live and raise your children? Could this be Jesus' message about anger from the Sermon on the Mount to his followers then and now? Perhaps we are cautioned not about the emotions that flash through our minds, those that we experience because we are human, but rather Jesus is warning us against becoming immersed in an emotion or immersed in a thought. The very real danger of anger is that it can become our dwelling place. What anger can do to us is visualized for us in verse 22. It's interesting now. It reads, "And if you say, 'You fool,' or worse, and yes, Facebook comments count, you will be liable to the hell of fire." Jesus is not talking literally about hell as a place of eternal damnation, all right? He doesn't use that word. He uses the word Gehenna. Gehenna was the trash heap outside of Jerusalem that was kept slowly burning and smoldering. And I want you to imagine the smell and the heat of this continuous dumpster fire. And this is what Jesus says anger can do to us. Not in 20, 30, or 50 years when we die and face eternal judgment. Right now, anger can waste us away from the inside. How many of us have ever felt the changes that anger makes inside us when we allow it to fester and dominate our thoughts? I know I've been there. And maybe even the worst part is how anger can infect and permeate every part of our lives. How many of us have had something anger us at work or at school, and we bring it home, and we take it out on our spouse, on our kids, on our pets? This anger, this suffering, this bitterness is not God's will for our lives. And I want to tell you, this is why Karen, going back to my friend from Yakima, is one of my heroes. Sure, the pastor made a wise point about this house of anger and bitterness, and yet only Karen could make the decision of whether or not to live in her anger or not. And Karen chose life. Karen decided to make some changes. She quit her job. She moved her family 1,000 miles to begin the process of becoming a doctor. And I assume that the anger and pain and bitterness never completely go away. And yet these things do not control, nor do they define Karen. And you can see this in the joy and passion in which she practices medicine. And you can see it in the light and life that shine in the 4 young women that she has raised. The good news for all of us is that we too have a choice. We have a choice to vacate the walls that anger, grief, and bitterness have built in our lives. These emotions don't preclude us from becoming disciples. All right? You might even remember a time two disciples, James and John, they want to call down fire upon a town and destroy it completely and burn all the people alive. That's some anger. Anger doesn't invalidate our faith. And yet Jesus warns that these powerful emotions can keep us from fully living now, here, and today. Jesus says, you are a city on a hill. He doesn't say you are a raging dumpster fire. And with Christ, you don't need to face these consuming feelings alone. This morning at confession, you hear the good news that you are forgiven. You are made clean. In the sacrament of Holy Communion, you hear the truth that you are forgiven and invited to live in a new way. The other good news is that the church is here to assist you in finding help, finding support, finding counseling if necessary. If you or a loved one are stuck in the darkness of constant anger or bitterness, call me. Make an appointment. You don't have to face this alone. Today we hear that we can get angry, but we no longer have to stay angry. Thanks be to God and amen.